All right. It's sort of going. So it may be turned on. So we'll just wait for the live to kind of fully connect. All right. So it looks like we're live. So to anyone tuning in today, I have something very special for you. I have Brianna with me, who is going to share her story. Before I bring her up, if you are new here, if you're new to my world, I am Alyssa. I'm a chronic pain specialist and the founder of the Chronic Pain Breakup Method, which is a 16-week program for those who really want to beat chronic pain naturally. And it teaches you how to improve your pain situation by applying some simple practices that are all based on neuroscience research. And so that's me, that's the program. But here's the thing, if you have chronic pain, you probably are a little bit frustrated, right? And so if you've had pain for years, it sucks the life right out of you. You've been jumping through all the hoops that the medical system and insurance companies have put in front of you for years, only to be let down by that system again and again. So of course, it starts to chip away at your sense of hope. And over, you will start to feel defeated and disappointed, and it can make you feel really hopeless. So if that's you, if you're feeling hopeless, you're frustrated, defeated, all of that, I want you to stick with me today, or with us today, because I have someone very special who's going to share her inspiring story with you. Because sometimes when you're in that place of pain and disability and feeling misunderstood and overwhelmed, it is so hard to even imagine what it could be like to feel better. And so you need to see some examples of what is possible. And people need to know what else is out there, like what else could work for them, and what does it take to start feeling better? And what could that success actually look like? And so that's why I've asked Brianna to join me today to share her story with you all. And so if you're joining us live here today, please say hi in the chat. And if you are watching on the replay, you can still say hi. But if you are here live, feel free to type any questions you have for either myself or Brianna into the chat, and we will definitely get to any of your questions at the end of our little talk today. And so with that being said, let's bring up Brianna. So Brianna was a client of mine who just recently graduated from the program, from the Chronic Pain Breakup Method. And so Brianna, if you would you mind introducing yourself and sharing just a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, I'm Brianna Gillespie. I love to make artwork. I have been recently doing resin artwork, and I'm a mom of a 4-year-old little girl, and I'm married and am a homemaker.
Yes. And it's cool to see some of your art supplies behind you, which is your craft, your art. So I love it. So so let's start by asking you, or if you can share a little bit about your pain situation and like how long you were in chronic pain, basically, and if you had a diagnosis, what was your diagnosis and what were you struggling with?
Yeah, so I actually have like a whole document typed up for when I used to go to doctors, from doctor to doctor. That way I could like not forget things and stuff. So when I was 15, I had low back pain. I think that was from a surgery that I had. I had my appendix and part of my large intestine and a fistula removed. And then shortly after that, I started to have low back pain. And then years later, probably like 4 or 5 years later, in 2009 or 10, I started to get really bad shoulder and neck pain. And at the time, I was serving tables and doing hair, so those are all very stressful to those areas. And then in 2014, I broke my tailbone. I just have like a little piece of it chipped off that's dangling there. And then after I had my daughter and breastfed, my mid back started hurting and that wouldn't go away. And then I started having wrist and hand pain. And then ever since my surgery, also when I was 15, I have a really big scar on my lower right abdomen, and that I get a lot of sharp pain there. And then I have some bladder issues where I just feel like I have bladder pain, or like I have to go to the bathroom all the time. I think that's most of it. And as far as the diagnoses, for my hands, they diagnosed me with a little bit of carpal tunnel and tendonitis. And then in my back, one of the chiropractors said I have a little bit of arthritis in my mid back. And then I have a rheumatoid, or not rheumatoid, sorry, a rheumatologist said that I have fibromyalgia, and a PT that specializes in does neurological PT, said that I have central sensitization syndrome.
Mm-hmm. So, it's been going on for over 10 years, probably almost 15 years, or maybe even longer than that.
Yeah,
And
even longer. Mm-hmm.
yeah, and so you already mentioned chiropractic, physical therapy, seeing a rheumatologist. Like, what else have you tried, and what in the past, like what has helped and what hasn't helped?
Yeah, I've tried multiple different medications. I've tried duloxetine, gabapentin, pregabalin, cyclobenzaprine, different anti-inflammatories like Toradol, Tramdol, naltrexone, diclofenac, hydrocodone, baclofen for my stomach issues, Norflex, a number of topicals. And as far as the meds like duloxetine, gabapentin, and pregabalin, those ones can be tricky for me because I have bipolar disorder type 1, which means I can get full on mania. And some of those medications pushed me into mania. So I couldn't be taking them regularly. And they also just didn't help. So occasionally Toradol would help me if I got it from a hospital, not if I took it orally. So they'd have to inject me with it, and then it would have to be like 2 or 3 times the amount that they would normally give someone for their pain. And then some of the topicals I tried were like diclofenac gel, lidocaine, magnesium lotion, arnica gel, doTERRA's blue rub, Aveda's blue oil. I did try hemp CBD oil that was certified through the US Hemp Authority, and I tried their CBD rub too. I tried magnesium rubs and different topical oils like peppermint oil, which that one would sometimes take like a little bit of the edge off. So I used to carry that around with me a lot, and I would always smell like Christmas because I just smelled like a peppermint candy. But and then Epsom salt baths. So the Epsom salt baths sometimes would take the edge off, and how I did that, I wasn't like just a cup of Epsom salt. I'd pour the whole whatever, I think it's like 5-pound bag or something like that. Just the normal size bag that you get
Yeah,
at the grocery store. Yeah, and then sometimes I'd put essential oils in there too. But if you do that, just be careful to put the oil on the salt first and then put it in the bathtub, because if you just put the oil in the water, then the oil can float to the top and give you like little oil burns, I guess you could say.
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it's like it's I don't know the right word. It's like interesting or not interesting, really. That's not probably not the right word, but to hear you list off like all of these medications that you have tried. And I think to anyone watching can relate. Like when you start to really like think about what all that you've tried, it just like that list goes on and on and on. And thinking about the amount of doctor visits and the amount of money that's spent on all of the medications and these different remedies that are not prescribed, not covered by insurance, that like all of that stuff that you've had to go through and still not really see any huge benefit from any of it, right? Like
Yeah.
I know that the baths were helpful for you, but like a lot of it, if it is beneficial, it's like short-term results, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I also tried steroid injections, and different food sensitivity tests and food allergy tests. And I made different diet changes for longer periods of time. And I tried juicing, and I incorporated many different supplements that were high in bioavailability. And I also tried medical marijuana and, of course, yoga, which is always
The
suggested.
yoga. Yeah. Yeah. And it's this is like the same sort of story that I hear a lot from my clients and from anyone that I talk to who's had this kind of pain for so long. Like you're so dedicated to trying to find anything that will help solve it. So you do everything. And it gets to a point where you may start to feel like, I don't feel like anything else could work because I've done so many things. And so I think there's that like loss of hope a little bit. I mean, I know for you, you found me somehow on the internet and got connected and got set up. But I'm sure like in the beginning, there was a little bit of skepticism towards this like approach and this program and looking at it and going, could this even work? Could this even help me? Because I've done so much already.
Yeah.
Like, what was your experience with that?
Yeah. I mean, at that point, I was willing to try anything that was different than anything or any doctor that I hadn't seen yet, or any specialist or coach or anything that brought something different than I had already tried, because I had also tried, multiple different osteopaths and orthopedic specialists and a number of different types of doctors and multiples of some of those doctors. So at that point, I was very much willing to give anything a shot. I was definitely losing hope and had my mind in a not great place at all. I was very depressed and was having suicidal ideations, and which can be a common symptom for bipolar disorder, but it was like those ideations were there for like a year and a half or more, so they were I was very stuck in a bad place. So yeah, I don't know. I think I answered your question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. It's you, yeah, you were at a point where like I'm willing to do anything to help me get out of this position, even if it's out of the traditional sense of what is considered traditional healthcare. And so yeah, you get to that point where you're ready to do whatever it takes. And even if it sounds a little bit weird, but
Yeah.
but so yeah, so you mentioned that you were pretty in a bad spot mentally and a lot of depression. And where were you at physically? Like what was your activity level like in your ability to perform activities sort of?
So I would get to the point where I would push myself a ton, and then I'd get huge pain flares. So it might have been a pain flare in my shoulders that would travel down my back, and then I'd go to the ER and I'd wait for 5 hours, and just sitting there in a chair, I would that would travel down to my entire back and my low back and then my arms. And so I'd get these huge pain flares that were debilitating and excruciating. And I'd just find myself in the hospital like 2 times a month or more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I'd go to church and I'd be sitting there, and then after church I'd get a flare in my low back and in my tailbone, and then again I'd end up being in the ER trying to find relief because my flare was just so bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's taken a huge toll on your like functional ability with sitting, standing, walking. And then it puts you to the point where there's nothing left for you to do but go to the ER. And I remember having that conversation early on with you where that was one of you'd almost have to rely on that as a form of getting relief and having to go to the ER and risking having to deal with whatever kind of providers you never know who you're going to get when you get there and what kind of reaction you're going to get from the providers that you see there. But it was your only solution. It seemed like it was the only thing that you could do at the time. And so what has changed for you since starting the program with starting the chronic pain breakup method, and how are things different at this point?
Yeah, so now I do not get those huge excruciating flares. I still get pain flares, but they're not as frequent and they're not as intense. I can actually stand them and I can still be functioning at least a little bit to do the things that I need to do and not be so debilitated. And yeah, that's amazing. So it's definitely helped my mind, and my suicidal ideations have dwindled, and I feel a ton better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then how many times have you gone to the ER since you started working in the program?
None, 0 times.
Hey.
Yeah.
And so your part of the program involves doing a self-assessment. So you do like your pre and post, your initial self-assessment and your final self-assessment. So we take you, any client who works in my program will fill out a questionnaire and enter in some data, some metrics to get an idea of where you're at starting out, and then at the very end, where you're at finishing up when you're about to graduate the program. And so everyone who goes through the program will get a copy of their results summary. And I would love to share your results because they were just so, they're just so fun to see and to look at and see that data. So I'm going to share my screen, but then if you could tell a little bit about what we're looking at. And so I'm going to pull up this screen. I don't know if you can see that okay, Brianna.
Yeah.
I don't know if I need to zoom in at all, but I can start here and then I can scroll down if you want, but can you tell us what we're looking at here?
Yeah, so my quality of sleep initially was at a 4 out of 10, 0 being the worst. So, right? That's right, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So initially I had a ton of trouble sleeping, tossing and turning, and waking up all the time and having trouble falling asleep. And then now I fall asleep relatively easy, and I usually tend to stay asleep. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, but I'm able to go back to sleep easily. And I'm not like awake because of pain typically. If I do, and in fact, there was one time I woke up with some really bad back pain during the program, and I did one of the nerve mobility drills that's taught, and that helped my pain go away like right away. And I was super surprised because I thought, okay, maybe this will just like mentally help me feel like I'm in control of something, but it really did take away my pain like right then and there. So I was very happy with that. And
Yeah.
then my brain fog initially was at an 8 and went down to a 5. So I had a lot less brain fog. I do still deal with some brain fog, and I think that's just part of living with chronic pain. It's super common. But I don't have that like excruciating pain to have my brain so elsewhere and not able to focus. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, like when you have less pain, your brain is spending less of its energy and its bandwidth on that problem. And so, yeah, so if you have a reduction in pain and you're getting better sleep, then this should go in that direction, right? So
Yeah.
definitely. Cool.
Yeah, and my tolerance for activity has improved. One example is that I would take my daughter to the pool in our complex, which is just a handful of yards away, and I would flare up in my shoulders and my neck just from carrying the pool bag. And that no longer happens, which is amazing. So, and then I also used to call our missionaries from church to come help me unload our groceries when I do like a bigger load. But now I'm able to carry up my groceries myself. I don't feel like an old lady.
Yay.
Yeah. And then functional ability, I think that kind of goes hand in hand with the tolerance of activity.
Yeah, and these two measures are similar but different in that the tolerance for activity is a singular number that you report and just in general, and then the functional ability screen is much more detailed, and it's an average of different measures. So if anyone is watching and wondering like what's the difference between these two scales, they are different. So the functional ability scale like actually asks you about very specific movements and activities and things like that. So like walking, standing, squatting, climbing stairs, sitting for long periods of time. So it's very much more specific to specific activities versus the tolerance for activity is more broad and can include those things like she described, like you're being able to carry a backpack and walk for a certain distance or carrying your groceries. So there is a slight difference on what these scales are measuring. So that's why you may be seeing a big jump in this one, but not so much in that one. So
makes sense.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then my digestive systems or symptoms. So my daughter, who's 4 years old, I mentioned, she would sit on top of me, jump on top of me, things like that. And anytime she touched my stomach, it hurt so bad. I still kind of have some like IBS symptoms where like right before I have to go to the bathroom, I get really a whole lot of cramping and stuff. But it's not like it was where like anytime my daughter touched my stomach, I would like jump out of my seat. So
yeah. And this one and even the reproductive symptoms one, like we almost don't even think to expect these things to be impacted sometimes with, you're coming into the program like, I'm here to help me with my pain and be able to function better. And you may not even think about how that ties in with some of these other systems like digestive health and reproductive health, but it definitely ties in. And so I loved that we had these kind of an effect on some of your digestive symptoms. This is really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and then with my reproductive stuff, I was getting really bad pains from some ovarian cysts or an ovarian cyst. And that still comes and goes when I'm not on my period, but it's not as bad as it was. So I'm not super worried about it, but we still monitor it, of course.
Yep.
And then my severity of anxiety. So of course, when you're in more pain, you have a lot more anxiety. And that was one of the things when I'd go to the ER, I'd try to get help with. It didn't always work, whether that was because of the provider or just because the medication just didn't work, even if it had before, because my anxiety was so bad from being in so much pain.
Mhm. Yeah.
And then my depression, I still have some depression. It's not nearly as bad as it was. Before it was like around a 10, and now it's more like a 7. I would even say lower.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's been a godsend, because I honestly feel like when I won this this program, I remember the day that I won it, I was at Costco shortly after I had found out, and I just couldn't stop smiling. I was just like glowing and smiling, and whoever was with me, they're like, "You look so pretty, look at you, you're just so happy." And they didn't understand why really, but I was just like, yes, a piece of hope that I needed. And I didn't expect this to be like a cure-all or a fix-all, but I figured it would help at least a little bit. And if it didn't, then at least I could check it off of my things to try.
Yeah. And it did. Thank God.
Yeah.
It did. It wasn't just a piece of hope or something to check off. And yeah, and I think I mentioned this when we talked privately, but also like to someone just looking at that graph of the depression graph of going from a 9 to a 7, to anyone just like looking at that on paper by itself without hearing the story behind it, that doesn't sound that significant. Like, oh, okay, she's still at a 7 of depression or maybe lower. But so that doesn't sound like that significant. But when you think about the place that Brianna was in before starting this program, that I think was one of the biggest symptoms that you were struggling with. Like if I asked you, like, yes, pain is a symptom, that is a problem. The anxiety is a problem. The digestive is a problem. The sleep is a problem. Like all these things are big problems. But like I think the depression was one of the things that was weighing on you most, because it wasn't like you were having, like you said, those suicidal ideations and did not want to be there. You wanted to get out of that. And so like for her to go from a 9 to a 7, I don't care. Like if it's not down to a 0 for the depression, like if we've made an impact in that, and that's something that's going to continue to improve over time, then thank God that this worked, because she's no longer in that place of having those thoughts on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Much different now. And
Yeah, totally.
we're so glad that you are still here.
Yes.
These are my favorite ones down on this page, which I don't know why I saved the best for last, or my favorite ones, but if we could go through those too.
Yeah. So severity of fatigue went down tremendously. I still have some shoulder problems and fatigue issues and things, and some days are worse than others, but overall it's a ton better than where I started out. And I think a lot of that has to do with the program, like what I've learned and implemented. Yeah.
Exactly.
And my degree of pain interfering with life has tremendously gone down. As I explained before, little things like taking my daughter to the pool, or carrying groceries up, or taking walks, or sitting in church now, I don't end up in the hospital afterwards, and those kinds of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the pain at its worst, of course, also went down. I still get some flares and things like that, but it's not nearly as debilitating as it was. And then my pain at its best, that's like has improved as well. because I don't, yeah, it just has. And pain related to anxiety, fear, stress, and negative beliefs has tremendously gone down. So I think the program and learning the science behind pain and learning lots of things to do to prevent and to when you do get the pain has really helped with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that measure, it's something that I think, in my professional opinion, is something that needs to change before we can actually really see significant improvements, like long lasting improvements in pain. Because when you think about that fear cycle and the fight or flight response, our physiology and how that works, like if you're in that fear and anxiety cycle, as that's getting activated, it's going to tell your body to keep protecting you. And pain is just one of those protective responses. And some people may be like, well, I don't think I'm afraid of pain, or I don't feel a whole lot of anxiety or stress. You may not feel it personally, but it still needs to be addressed one way or the other before we can actually have a significant improvement in pain. And so I love seeing this. The maximum score on this questionnaire is a 52, and so she was at a 39 and went down to a 6, which is practically nothing. So we love to see that sort of thing. And so all of these results are something to really, really be celebrating. And so I am so proud of Brianna for like putting in the time and doing the work and showing up every week over and over. And so she got those results because she did the work. All I did was just show her, here's what to do, but she did the work in the end. And
I
so
wouldn't
Brianna,
say all you did. You did
I
a
mean,
lot. This program is amazing, and
oh, thank you.
everything that you do with the coaching calls and all of that is awesome. So
Yeah. Well, thank you. And so that is something that, speaking of the program itself, like, to anyone watching who's like, what the heck are they talking about? Like, what are they doing in this program? What was it for you that, what is the process involved? If you're telling someone like who has no clue what this program is about, like, what is it? Are we doing mental health? Are we, learning to talk to our adrenal glands? Like, what are we doing in this program? And why does it work?
yeah, so you're learning about no-seed plastic pain and how to address retraining your nervous system. And
does it involve movement, or like what sort of drills are there?
Yeah, so there's some different drills, like nerve mobility drills. There's some left right discrimination drills. There are mirror imagery drills and sensory discrimination drills.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also movement that involves like stationary stretches and if wanting to get back to working out or work out more is on your to-do list, then she helps you with that as well.
So we do a lot of those sort of pain retraining drills that you mentioned. Some of them involve some movement, but none of them are intended to cause any worsening of pain. I think it's just important to mention. I think a lot of people may think that it involves like just pushing your body or strength training, and it's none of that. There is a component on stretching and strengthening, like you mentioned. But I assume that people have done physical therapy prior to coming into this program. So it's definitely not my focus. I think when your body is ready to start stretching and strengthening, you need to understand how to do that correctly and safely. And so there is a lesson on that, but it's not my main focus because I assume that you've already done that stuff. So So what would you say, because there's a lot of learning content besides just the drills and stuff like that, like the stuff that you can actually implement on a daily basis. What would you say from some of the learning content was your big like aha moment when you were like kind of learning some of the neuroscience?
I think it would be like two things combined, which is pushing to your pain and not through your pain, and then also having, like, with that component, knowing the science behind neurotags, like that, doing, I'm going to be really horrible at explaining it, but like doing the same things that you usually experience pain with, the more you do those things, then the more it's going to strengthen that, the pain being there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And you did a great job explaining it. It's basically, yeah, so neurotags is like the term we use in the program, but so Brianna, props to you for like learning the lingo, but that is something that you learn about in the program, which is that, yeah, you um the more you push through pain, or the more that you are experiencing pain, you're practicing it, you're reinforcing those pain pathways in a sense. And so the program, we call them neurotags. And you learn about what are they and how do they get activated, how do they get turned on and turned off, and how do we start to undo them, because they get so strong and hardwired. We need to start to disconnect some of those hardwired neurotags for pain. So some of the drills will do that for us. And then we do talk about pacing as well, and give you a nice simple strategy to execute pacing in any form that you need to in your life, whether it's washing your hair. I remember having that conversation with just getting through something as simple as like washing your hair, or getting out and walking more. Like it can be something as simple as that, or maybe you want to get into the gym more, so it just depends. But we can start with pacing and some of these other drills to start reducing some of those hardwired neurotags. Exactly. Cool. So for a lot of people, like hearing this today, they might be thinking like, will this work for me? Like, how could it work for me? I don't want to spend more money. I've already spent so much money on my pain problem. I'm afraid to make this sort of an investment, because what if it doesn't work? So what would you say to someone who's thinking that? Would it be worth it to me?
So I think from the program and during that, we learned that if you have chronic pain, there's going to be some component of you having whatchamacallit system,
Nervous system?
yeah. having nervous system like issues. So I would say if you are a human with chronic pain, you have a nervous system, and there's going to be some retraining that you can benefit from. And
Yeah.
that's what this program does.
Yeah, I agree with that. And yeah, and it is an investment. There's an investment involved, unless you're Brianna and you win the scholarship. Woohoo! Which there will be another one coming soon, so stay tuned, everyone. But yeah, it's the kind of thing that it is an investment, but it works if you show up, you do the work. If you, like Brianna, she did not let me down in terms of like, I gave her the scholarship because I believed in her commitment. And so to those who commit to doing the work and saying like, I'm going to show up, I'm going to do whatever you recommend, I'm going to implement it consistently. To those who do that, there's no reason why you wouldn't feel better at the end of this program. Like we said, Brianna's not feeling 1,000% better. She's not at 100%, zero pain, zero symptoms. And she's probably not going to be there for the rest of her life. She's not going to live at a 0 out of 10 pain, because there is no cure all. But if we can change her life and give her some life back and be able to take her kid to school without getting a flare up or having to go to the ER every time this happens, we're giving her life back, and that's what matters.
Yeah.
And so I can't wait to see some of the continued results that come from this as she continues to implement, because, it's just been 16 weeks. The longer you implement this, the longer it has the potential to keep making progress. Yeah. Yeah. So very cool. I'm so proud of you, by the way.
Thanks.
So, is there anything else you'd like to add or say to anyone watching or listening on the replay?
I don't think so. No.
No
Yeah.
worries. So, thank you so much. Thank you again for your willingness to jump in here and share your story about where you were and where you are now, and everything that you've been through, and being super vulnerable and sharing all of this. I know it can't be easy to share some of those chronic pain problems, even the digestive system, like some of that's embarrassing. So really appreciate you showing up and sharing your story, because it has just provided so much in value to the community here, and just to be able to inspire so much hope to anyone who's watching or watching the replay, because people need to know, right? And so, thank you, Brianna. And to those of you who are watching, thank you for listening today and tuning in. If you are interested in learning more about the program that we're talking about, all about the knowledge and the system that helped Brianna to start feeling better and seeing some of these incredible results in actually a relatively short period of time, there are so many ways for you to get connected and get help. So actually, you can private message me in the Facebook group. You can comment below if you want me to reach out to you. We can set up a phone call. Any way you want to connect, I'd love to talk to you personally in a more one-on-one setting, so we can discuss some of your specific pain situation, determine if you have this type of problem that this program addresses. If you do, fantastic. I will definitely give you a chance to ask any questions you have about the program and what it would look like for us to work together. So I will leave a link in the description to reach me to book a call. And also, Brianna, is it okay if folks reach out to you if they have questions specifically for you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can comment below and tag me if you want to. If you're more comfortable in a private message, that's okay too. Just let me know that you watch this video so I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, give her some context, so you're not just like a random person on the internet creeping out, so just let her know, say, hey, I found you in this group. But yes, feel free to reach out to Brianna if you have specific questions about her story and her journey. So again, thank you, Brianna, and thank you all for watching. That is it for today, and I will see you next time.